and it was pretty cold because it was at the end of the season, sort of a September kind of cold day. And the water temperature, because it gets fed from the stream, is like 34 degrees when it comes out of the ground. Ice cold stuff. Anyway, two of the guys that were in our fishing party had partied a little bit too hard the night before, and one of them had never actually worn a pair of chest waders before. And before he got in the water, I informed him that the last thing that you want to have happen is for you to slip on a rock and fall in and have your waders fill up with water, because it gets really hard to get back above the water at that point. So I was like, shuffle your feet slow, make sure of your steps, and all you have to do is cross the river and you're going to be good. And not 30 seconds later, this poor hungover young man slips on a rock and falls face first into the water. Thankfully, my buddy Sam was right there next to him, and Sam's a paramedic, and he grabs him by the straps of his waders and rips him out of the water. And the guy comes up just blowing water out of his mouth, eyes wide as dinner plates, something out of Shark Week, just teeth and water and frenzy. Anyway, he then proceeds to walk back to the shore from whence he came, and spent the entire day in a running car with the heat on, waiting for us to catch fish. We all limited out, though. I mean, it was a really good day to be on the water, but that poor kid.
TJ, we went live.
Oh, okay.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 140 of Sawdust Talk. And we are joined tonight with Ryan Cochrane of Cochrane Kayak, or RPC.
Woodworks.
RPC Woodworks. We all know you as Ryan Cochrane, though. So we're going to get into him in just a moment. TJ is going to run through our sponsors real quick.
Sure. First and foremost, we need to thank Hannah and the team over at Surf Prep Sanding Systems for their sponsorship and their support on this show. If you guys are in the market for a sander or abrasives, you can use the coupon code Sawdust Talk. Save a little bit of money on their website, and the show gets a little bit of help from that. But if you don't know about Surf Prep Sanders, get to know them. Find one in the wild. There's a bunch of cool kids on the Instagrams and the social medias that are using them. They show up to events. Get your hands on those sanders because they are divine. The other person that we need to shout out is Layla over at Casey Bombshell Designs. Layla is helping us with our merch. She is hosting our merch website and getting that stuff out. So if you really need a Sawdust Talk hat or a shirt or a hoodie so that you can fit in with the cool kids, go to Casey Bombshell Designs and you can find our swag there. The third thing that we need to discuss is Makers for St. Jude. The year is wrapping up. The funds have been raised. The raffles and the auctions have taken place. We've raised well over our initial goal for the year of $20,000, which was double what we did last year. And then the goal was extended to $35,000, and we have since blown past that goal as well. And I believe we're just scratching at $40,000 raised to fight childhood cancer and to support families going through one of the worst scenarios that you can go through as a parent. If you want to get involved, Makers for St. Jude and Woodworker versus Cancer Mike on Instagram will get you pointed in the right direction. So when you make cool stuff and you want your cool stuff to do cool stuff for good people, get a hold of Mike and we'll get you working for a great cause. And with that, Patreon. I always forget Patreon. Our Patreon is cheap. It's like $5 a month. It helps Jessie and I make it to events so that you can shake our hand and give us high fives in person. And it also helps with our licenses for cool things like software and making our gear a little bit better so that we can sound good and you can enjoy the audio quality of these recordings as we make them. So swing by Patreon/Sawdust Talk. And if you sign up for $5 a month, Jessie will probably spend hers on coffee, but I'll probably buy airplane tickets with it. So.
And with that, welcome Ryan to Sawdust Talk. We appreciate you coming on tonight. And we actually got to hang out, both of us got to hang out with you at Maker Camp.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me. Yeah, and Maker Camp was a great time with you guys.
Yeah. Why don't you tell the quick story about how I almost maimed you.
Yeah, I mean, so I was, demoing in the back of the same tent, and if you've ever been to Maker Camp, every time you need to go to the bathroom, it's urgent because you're holding on, you're waiting, you're talking to somebody, and then all of a sudden I'm like, I gotta go, sorry, and I just start walking to the tent, and all of a sudden a giant piece of wood comes flying off the lathe right at my head. And all I did was yell, "Oh crap!" Maybe there were some few more words, and I kept going. And I was like, "I hope your bowl's okay."
Yeah. Yeah, no, the bowl failed, a piece flung across the tent, and all I remember screaming was, "Holy shit!" And yeah, it was just really glad nobody got struck. And it was at the end of the day. Thankfully, it wasn't like right into a big full tent full of people. It was after hours.
I think that piece of the bowl got halfway across the room, and you were still turning.
Yes. Yeah. No, it just
that fast. It
the bowl
just exploded.
failed. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it was nuts.
Good
I
times.
love that response, actually. Like, oh shoot, I gotta pee. Hope your bowl's okay. Keep walking.
I mean, the other time I had an incident when I was doing the same thing, coming up from the front of the tent. You were turning, and the look on your face was so priceless. I had to stop and take a picture.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was.
Ironically,
that was a fun tent.
Ironically, that 7-second video of me looking like I was gonna poop my pants, turning for the first time, got me more views than 90% of videos that I actually put effort into on Instagram. So I
perfect.
that.
Yeah.
That's great.
Well, we were having fun, Jessie.
Well, it was. You know what? It was really like an honest moment, wasn't it? So
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, Jessie gonna go with honest moment. Hey, now to be fair, that was us trying to make like a little bowl platter out of a relatively thick segmented cutting board. That we had the bad bandsaw in our tent, not the good bandsaw in our tent, and so like trying to saw it round beforehand wasn't really on the menu.
Don't let Jimmy DeResta hear you call it a bad bandsaw.
No, that one was the bad bandsaw. The good bandsaw was in the other tent.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, that one wasn't especially adjustable.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But yeah, plenty of power, just couldn't really be set up appropriately.
We just need a table saw set up,
Yeah, or
Maybe
big.
we should talk to Harvey.
Yeah, maybe a Harvey table saw set up in the Highland woodworking tent. It could be so useful for so many people to make their blanks, make whatever they need, and do demonstrations of the table saw too. So.
Get one of those big old bandsaws out there with some beef in there. That'd be awesome.
I mean, they already have their lathe and their chopsticks. So
I don't know.
What's a few more machines,
We'll make some phone calls.
Yeah,
Speak more
I have
about
no problem.
Chopsticks.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Actually, chopsticks would be much easier with a thin rip jig on a table saw than like I was doing them on my bandsaw, and they're chattered a bit. So then I drove the 2.5 hours to Pat Lapp's house to run them through his drum sander, and then bring them back and cut them to length and take them to Maker Camp and shoot them on the shooting plane. So it was kind of it was a bit of an exercise, but it was fun.
Yeah, and the chopstick master's a fun little tool, man. Like everything that you get with the kit, I still have a couple of the blanks that it came with left.
Right.
But the manufacturing of the blanks, how close to 6 millimeters do they need to be, or 7?
I think they're like 7, but they can be a little bit wider. You're just gonna have to plane more down on the first 2 sides, and then it's not so bad. And actually, a few of mine were a little bit thicker, and so when the kids picked those ones, I kind of would help them a little bit more at the start, just to make sure that it was tough, because they're taking big shavings at the start because it's fully engaged, and often I kept the mouth closed so there was less tear out. So sometimes I'd have to open it up just for the first couple passes, and I mean, that's
So,
that's like any tool, adjusting things as you for your medium, So
so for our listeners, Ryan taught a chopstick class at Maker Camp. He did adult classes, but he also did kids classes. Um, Tell me about the kids classes, and you know what I want you to talk about.
I absolutely do. So the main idea of me wanting to do the chopsticks is this maker camp was great, but the maker camp before, I saw a lot of kids running around, and there was only one or two things that they could really do, and I said I'd like to get kids involved more. So when I pitched it to Harvey and Bridge City, they loved it because one, they already told me that the chopstick master was a hit at one of the shows they went out to out west, and they said it was amazing. Everyone loved it. So yeah, we would love to do that. And then when I talked about getting the kids involved, thought that was great because for me, one, seeing a lot of the kids with nothing to do, maybe they start to think woodworking is boring and like making is boring. But this year it seemed like so many kids were just so excited, and my line of the kids was huge. And I think it was only supposed to do 1 hour for the kids. I ended up doing 2 hours only every day for the kids. But luckily I had this wonderful little helper, and she stepped in. She listened intently to every single instruction I gave her, and then I turn around and she's like basically spitting out those instructions perfectly to another kid. So for anybody that doesn't know, it was Jessie's daughter, and she was fantastic. She's going to make a wonderful teacher someday, and probably an absolutely incredible woodworker as well.
She loved
She's
it.
not too shabby on a lathe. Also, that little girl turned a magic wand with the quickness.
Really? That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Fearless little thing. Just
Yeah.
got in there, got messy, and then got awesome. It's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, it was fun seeing her running around and enjoying herself and
Yeah.
having fun. And it's awesome because Maker Camp is like I feel like it's one of those places where you can kind of like, okay, go ahead, just don't go too far, kind of thing, like it used to be, like a safe environment. Everyone kind of looks out for each other. Everyone looks out for each other. Sorry, and when you see a kid running around, you see a kid in trouble. Hey, are you okay? And oh yeah, good, okay. So it was a wonderful experience to see more and more kids there, and hopefully next year we double the amount of kids we saw from this year.
I do,
Yeah, I
yeah.
think
I had one conversation with a brand about the kids at Maker Camp and kids running amok. But prior to this year's Maker Camp, they didn't have they didn't facilitate to the kids as they did this year, which I mean, having that little like booklet where you get your little stamp, your passport stamp, if you do this class or that class. But I do also think, woodworking it can be dangerous,
Absolutely.
safety is an issue. So I completely understand that part. But having them facilitate classes that were safe for kids, but also to parents that want to bring your kids to Maker Camp, if they're into it, bring them. If they're not, just don't. Because I brought
No,
one kid
exactly.
and I left the other one at home because he could care less about that kind of stuff. So
I also think it's a little bit of like when we demo for a company, it's a little bit our responsibility too to make sure that the tools are safely stored after our demos, so that like if the kids are running around, they can't. It's going to be hard for them to make a mistake or get in trouble. Like the forge was going on, there were people there monitoring that constantly. So
mhm.
and from my knowledge, there was not one single accident with anything. And I understand certain things should have an age requirement for sure, a minimum age requirement. But like with the chopstick master, that was the beauty of it. Like, okay, look, this is a sharp blade. Don't put your hand there. I'm going to be with you all the time. And I only had 2 stations running so that I could see both children. If I want to do more next year, there'll have to be more people demoing, just to make sure that we can manage the line, the big line that we seem to always have. And at the end of the day, every day, it was a late day, but I still took the time to safely store all my stuff away. So if you wanted to get at, you'd have to take the tarp off, go in underneath, take everything out, understand how to take it out, and go from there. So it's no different with a table saw or with a bandsaw. You can just unplug it,
Yeah,
unplug it.
exactly.
But yeah, I just thought that Highland tent was just magical
It was
this
yeah.
year. Like the
With the
Highland crew
restoration.
themselves were generous beyond my
Oh my
expectations. The restoration, like you were saying,
yeah,
it was baffling to me just like how much stuff was there to play with.
yes,
Like,
and how well how they do such a great job, and how many people they had, like making sure that everyone got something done that walked in there. Bumbleshoots
yeah,
was awesome because for me, I was thinking, oh, I'm gonna have to find some oil, bring it down, probably just a bin of mineral oil, and then I found out Bumbleshoots was there, and I was like, oh, hey, I'm doing chopsticks, and they said, hey, bring everybody over to me. I was like, really? They're like, yep, we'll do a dunk for you. So that was great. So everyone got to finish up their chopsticks, and that's a magical part of any kind of project, laying the finish down on something and seeing it come to life. So that was I'm glad that everyone got to experience that. And then, like you said, Highland was amazing. Pat and you up front turning with Harvey, Vic Teslin with Melbourne Tools. He helped me
yeah,
out big
that dude's
time.
awesome.
Yeah, he's great. So Melbourne Tools is wonderful as well. So, and they had the shooting plane for me to, and then he actually just said, "Here, take it at the end of camp because if you ever need it for any more of your chopsticks." I was like, "Thanks, man. I appreciate that."
Dude, that's amazing.
I would shout out UJK as well. They sent me the bench that is behind me, this wonderful bench, and multifunction, which I took there and used for that. It was super solid for that. There was just so many good people, and I won the sawhorses from Highland Woodworking. So
Yeah, those things were crazy.
I don't even know how I fit them in my car, brought them across the border. So and I set them up in here, and I was like, oh, I have to take them down because they were just too big for the project that I had to do in the last little while, which was 140 cutting boards. So I was like, I need the space for the manufacturing. So they're still sitting there. They're beautiful, wonderful. I'm super excited about them. But yeah, they'll sit for a bit, and maybe there'll be a CNC sitting on them soon.
Yeah, I mean,
Maybe.
Highland donated a huge burl cap to the lathe,
Oh yeah,
which was crazy dangerous and fun to turn live because it was just full of inclusions and
yeah.
wacky brain, but like that turned out pretty decent. And
And
then
that's where my
Jessie,
bowl blank came from, right?
yeah, your cutting board / bowl blank was from Highland also. I think it's gonna make an appearance here in a minute. But yeah, Highland kept the burl bowl, which is fine. Yeah, see,
Oh, that's so nice.
yeah, look at what a great job Jessie did while she was terrified.
TJ finished it.
Maybe.
So what was
I
your
was
like most memorable moment at Maker Camp?
Pat paid me the most intimate compliment I've gotten in like 2 years that can't actually be repeated on the show, but he said some really sweet stuff to me.
He's a great guy.
Yeah. Jimmy's bandsaw demo was pretty cool. But
Seeing
like,
how amazing he is on the bandsaw, it's just like he's magic, eh?
yeah, he's real quick. I don't know. I met like a bunch of people in person that I thought that I might have met at like Workbench Con, but the vibe at Maker Camp is
It's quite personal, eh?
it's superior in every way to the type of personality that I like to have when I'm near tools. Does that make sense?
It
Yes.
absolutely makes sense.
Um, and yeah, I left just so stoked, right?
Me too.
I got to play with tools. I got to play with wood. I got to be a professional in the presence of other people who are, professionals, which is cool for me, right? And then, yeah, just finally spending time with people, which is a big difference between, I think also is that like working con is like a handshake, a high five, like, hey, and then people move on to the next conversation, and then it's hey, and then another conversation, right? And you're bouncing all
Maker
over.
camp, you're what, 9 o'clock till in the morning, 10 o'clock in the morning till 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, whatever you want at night,
Yeah, you want to sit down and eat a slice of pizza with, somebody that you've been following for 4 years. Like, not only are they keen to do it, but like it's a real thing.
Yeah.
Sure. Like, that's awesome.
Speaking of professional stuff, I don't know how many people know your past and how you're famous. Can you speak?
Yeah, absolutely. So at the age of 7, I just went down to, like, I grew up in a very small town, 3,000 people, and we went down to this canoe club, and I just started kayaking, and I loved it immediately. So I stuck with it, and over the years I started to get pretty good at it, and ended up in 2011. I had gone to a couple world championships before that. So in 2009, I went to the world championships. 2001, I went to the junior world championships. 2010, I went to the world championships. 2011 as well, but also I went to the Guadalajara Pan American Games, where I won a gold medal with my partner. That was qualification for the Olympics. So we ended up going to the 2012 Olympic Games, where we finished 7th place. And I continued to compete, and we went to the 2016 Olympic Games. So for 9 years, I was in the top 10 in the world.
That's insane.
So yeah, it was something. So for people that don't know, I was in the tandem kayak, but not the whitewater kind, the point A to point B in the lane lines, kind of like rowing, but we go forwards, they go backwards. So
Go forward, not backwards.
Yeah.
Funny enough, at Maker Camp, Adam Barnett, he came to me and he's like, dude, because in the summer I actually went back and did some racing this summer at the national championships for fun, to get back to it after a few years of being away and just doing full on woodworking, like constantly every day. And he said, I saw your post this summer, and then I realized, like, it wasn't a joke. Like, you actually went to the Olympics. And I was like, yeah, man, I didn't know that you thought it was. He thought I was just making this, like, Olympic woodworker or whatever. So he was like, that's crazy, man. And I was like, yeah. So I mean, I talk about it, but I don't. I mean, it's not always coming up in conversations, but
I think
that's the subtleness in the logo. The P in my name is actually the torch, and then the Olympic flame. So that's where that comes from.
I love that.
That's
I think
cool.
it's probably has a lot to do with, like, your commitment level too when it comes to woodworking. Like, we were talking before the show about the 140 cutting boards. I mean, you don't just go into something and be like, I'm just gonna do this half-ass. It's like, I'm this, and I'm gonna do it full bore. So
yep.
I think
And that was a challenge, and there was a few people, like even my wife was like, you're never gonna finish in time. So I needed 120 for last Friday, and I hit the mark for the party, and then they wanted another 20 after that for corporate gifts. So they said, you have another week for the corporate gift one, so no stress for that. So I was like, perfect, thank you. But yeah, I pulled a lot from my athletic career over to the woodworking world. I worked in a company for 5 years, doing slab dining tables and epoxy tables and everything you can imagine. I've done thousands of tables. And that attitude of like, just, you need to get a job done, you got to get it done, you do it, but you got to do it really well. And I use this analogy all the time. Um, and it's kind of funny because I talked to some kids at school about it too. It's like, yeah, would you be happy with an 80% in school? They're like, oh yeah, 80 would be great. So for me, if I did an 80% in my race, it was a no boy, and it was a no go, man. I wouldn't have even been in top 20 in the country, you know, like, so you always had to be 99 to 100, 110. Like, you always had to be performing above or at least at. And the reason that most people think we train like nutcases, we were training 6 hours a day, 6 days a week. Why were we training like that? Well, it's never to get faster necessarily. It is, but it's to make sure that those bad days come closer to your good days. It's the same thing in woodworking. That's why we work the way we do in woodworking. We make sure that we refine our techniques so that every time we do an operation, there's less chance of making a mistake. There's always a chance of making a mistake, but we try to reduce it by training, and doing the operation over and over, and learning and listening to other makers and picking up tips and tricks. But the key is always, especially the same thing if you're in a race, you make a mistake, you have to pivot, you have to be able to fix it. You can't just toss it aside. Like, I did 140 cutting boards, and I was doing the juice grooves today, and it was the first time, and I did not check my router, and the pin had moved, and I plunged too deep. So luckily, knowing that I can make a square block, just turn that into the bottom, flip the other side, put the juice groove on the other side, make a square block, glue it in just like you would a butterfly, trim it flush, nobody's going to know. So just knowing how to fix your mistakes and how to do it quickly, that's kind of, I pull all that over from my athletic career. So, and hopefully this woodworking career lasts me till the day I die, you know.
Yeah. No, I'd like to add to that also is that if you can find a way to reduce the cost of mistakes, right?
Absolutely. I do that too.
And not only like in terms of materials, but also like at the mental level, making mistakes or having errors. And when the cost starts getting smaller and smaller, your courage to experiment and put the hours in and get wild and push yourself is also, I think,
Absolutely. And
definitely
you know,
important.
the wonderful thing about woodworking is it's got the same kind of cycle as being an athlete. So, and you know, quickly back to your efficiency thing, like with the cutting boards I was doing too, I ended up with a pile of blanks enough to do maybe 2 or 3 more cutting boards, or actually, sorry, 4 to 6 more cutting boards, because I was doing them in double lengths. And that was my waste. You know, I had some thin strips that'll end up going to the fire pit, but it was always about the idea of, okay, I got to find this board, that board, that board, and then I cut this one at 5. You know, like, so I basically made my Kanban. I would bring them in. I cut all my boards up. I had a 5-inch piece of maple, a 5-inch piece of walnut, a 1-inch piece of walnut, a 1.5-inch piece of maple, 1-inch piece of cherry, 1.5-inch piece of maple, and a 2-inch piece of walnut. And I laid those all out so I could clearly see, all right, I have a stack of 20 right there. Okay, perfect. So finish that, go back to the wood shop, buy that same amount of wood, and just keep doing that over and over so I can get them done and get them out, because this shop is only 160 square feet. So yeah, that's quite important to make sure you are organized with that. So sport, you know, it's very important to be organized. It's very important to be able to pivot, fix your mistakes, lower your costs, like you said. It's the same thing in the sporting world. So it's a wonderful thing to pull over for me. And it was very easy. You know, I did so many years of just high level intensity that it was kind of like second nature when I got here, you know. So, and taking crazy risks, and like, I'll go back to the cycle now. You know, peak seasons right before Christmas for us, you know, but for kayaking, it was just shifted to the end of August. And then, we've got our period in the woodworking and furniture industry, epoxy industry, January, February, where not much is going on. This is your opportunity to practice your skills, to fix your shop, upgrade a shop fixture, um,
Right.
learn a new tool, whatever you want. You've got like a 2-month period of like actual freedom where you're probably not going to get many sales. So just take that opportunity to be like, all right, well, let's get experimental with a new product. Oh, it works or it doesn't work. It doesn't matter because it's a learning process. You're going to gain something from it for sure.
Yeah.
So you had said 175 square feet?
160 here. Yeah.
160. How do you make that work?
Let's see if I can.
He's on a boat.
You have to describe this for people that are just listening to the audio.
So basically, I would bring in a batch. I would do them in batches of 20, and then I would take them out to the hallway or to the office or wherever I had space. Finish them there. At one point, I had 77 to put finish on all at once. So basically, I took some bumble shoots and I poured it into a container and I just bathed them and dried them for a little bit and then buffed them off. But it was the process for me was planing and jointing and then dimensioning to the like I would always keep it a little bit thicker, dimension it, put it in my clamps. After that group of 20 were done, fix any little imperfections, pull out my planer, put it on the bench, run them to the planer, take the planer, put it off the bench, run them to the chop saw, chop, get them down to proper length. Then the sanding starts, sand the batch of 20 boards, 30 boards, whatever it was, up to 180. Route the profile, route the juice groove, water pop it, let it dry, pull it back, 180 again on the bottom, in the laser, out of the laser, next one goes in, take that board, sand the top, put that to the side, in the laser on the top for the company logo, and the process goes like that. So when I was sanding, I was literally sitting right here. There's a TV right there in front of me. The laser's just under the TV. TV's running, headphones on, and I'm sitting there with my board sanding them. So it's not that boring when you have some entertainment. You're constantly active. One board, boom, laser starts, boom, laser starts, boom. All the boards are exactly the same, so it makes it easy. It's true manufacturing when it's like, and that's what I did for 3 years. Manufacturing production. I directed it, so it's just adapting it to a small shop. So it can be done for anybody out there that thinks that, oh man, I can never do that. Like 160 square feet, I have everything in here: jointer, planer. I have a small lathe. I have a grinder. I have a drill press. I have chop saw with a miter saw station and a 4-foot epoxy station. I have cabinets. I have a full-size bandsaw. I have 2 multifunction benches in here, and I have a laser. I'm missing some stuff for sure. A lot of like Festool and sustainers, 3 dust collectors, which was interesting because I went through 5. Let's see how many gallons they are. They are 42 gallons. I did 5 bags of dust, 42 gallons, and I did 4 of the Festool 26-liter bags, disposable ones.
Yeah.
And you want to hear something funny about the whole story? I had the company that I purchased the wood for an extra $2 a square foot, board foot, surface it S3S for me. So that's how much I had to take, like when I was just taking off that 0.1.
Right.
And all of the cuts and the ripping. So all of the extra stuff after the initial surfacing. That's how much dust I went through.
That's madness.
It sounds like TJ's shop.
Yeah, mine are curly and full of air.
And I have one of those old, like if you see that, one of those old. This is a King Canada, but it's like a Harbor Freight.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what mine looks like.
Oh man, when you have to like, it's just like, can I get a few more operations in there because you just don't want to open that thing and then all the dust it goes everywhere and it's a nightmare. But
Yeah,
I mean,
I hook
I
mine
needed
up
it, so
to a cyclone that feeds a steel lid on a 55-gallon drum. And so I don't do bags and all that wrestling. I've got a steel ring that holds the drum lid on. And it is,
so 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 where I live, you have to bag your dust and you have to throw it out in a bag.
oh, okay. Yeah.
So I
My,
know a lot of people they take the bin and they just dump it out. But I mean, I'm sure you could get away with it because it's like I'm not doing like this round was no epoxy, so it's probably okay. Like I could take that to the
You
woods
can
and dump it in
burn
the
it.
woods, and
You
it's
can burn it.
you could burn it. But burning sawdust is quite tricky because it's you have to use an accelerant because it's so dense. You
yeah.
can sprinkle it on, but I mean I can't sprinkle what's five what's seven 5 times 42 gallons, you know? Yeah. Um I
You just
tried to think of
beer,
something.
grab a beer, grab a camping chair,
Man,
go out
just
by the
sit there.
bonfire, and just like. Psh, psh, psh,
Oh,
psh.
I have a fireplace in my house, so that helps. So all of the cutoffs, the little cutoffs I have are now kindling wood for starting my fires, and we've got we had some really cold weather. So I'll do it in Fahrenheit for you guys. It was 14 degrees the other day. Um,
No, thank
I
you.
think so that's minus 15, minus 16, somewhere around there for us. Um, Today we were +6 for us, raining, and tomorrow we're going back to freezing. So it's like going to be a skating rink everywhere. But typically we get down to -40 here in Quebec sometimes in the winter. -40 is -40. That's where Fahrenheit and centigrade meet, and that's cold. That's where
That
you
is,
can throw a boiling pot of boiling water in the air and it just disintegrates.
yeah.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
we have we get down to, I guess that's -16 here, 12 to 16 every once in a while in St. Louis,
Yeah.
and we all throw boiling
Yeah.
cups of coffee or blow bubbles and they freeze in the
Yeah.
air.
Yeah, that's fun. Yeah, yeah. Uh,
Um,
I don't mind that weather so much. It sounds crazy, but it's like the in between is really bad when it's close to freezing and it goes like just above, just below, and it's like windy and you get wet from the rain and then you get freezing cold. When it's that cold, like you're wearing your full suit. You don't go out and sit outside and chat by a fire. It's just too damn cold. So it's part of this area, and but the consistency, once it's cold, and once it's hot, it's hot. We still have really warm summers. We have perfect 4 seasons. Fall is amazing. It's kind of like upstate New York, just colder.
I
I can
feel so
dig it.
bad when you guys talk about weather because I'm like over here in the Pacific Northwest and I'm like, we get snow like for a few days a year. I mean, cold for us is like 30
Yeah.
Fahrenheit. Like, and we're like, oh, it's so freezing. We can't go
So
outside.
Yeah,
I,
it
I
was
can't I
31
can't
this
complain.
morning.
I can't complain because I spent half of my life living in Florida. Because when there's ice, we can't kayak. So I would spend between 4 to 6 months a year in Florida. And I remember you get used to it. So we'd be down there and you'd be in a sweater, and you'd be like, damn, it's cold. Then you'd come home and it would be way colder and you'd be in a t-shirt and you'd be like, yeah, it's okay. It's just,
It's humidity too, though, right?
yeah. Oh, the humidity. So that's really a hard thing in Quebec where I live for woodworking. If you leave a board for too long, it will warp and twist because we have extremely humid summers and extremely dry winters. So cracking, twisting, warping,
Yeah.
as you know, well, maybe, I don't know, maybe you're much more consistent. Are you coastal?
We
Close to the
are,
coast? Like,
we're like as far northwest as you can be without being in Canada. So we are
okay.
like, the water, the ocean is like 20 minutes that way.
Right. So you get a lot of humidity then.
We don't get that much humidity.
Oh,
It
yeah?
doesn't get that humid.
We do.
It's like dry heat. We get dry
Really?
heat and we get dry cold. I
Yeah,
don't know.
we have wet heat and wet cold. You can be freezing and sweating at the same time in this city, which means it doesn't matter how much clothes you wear, you still have icicle armpits. St. Louis is the most delightful armpit of the Midwest, and I'm not sure I'd want to live anywhere else.
I've always wanted to see the arch.
It's pretty cool in person,
Yeah.
but it really only takes the one visit. Like, I can't imagine.
I've never
being
been
"Oh,
out west.
again."
I've been out west in Canada. I've been in Alberta. I skied into BC once, but I've never been out west in the U.S. Been all up and down the eastern seaboard. We love Maine as a family. We go all the time to Maine, and like when I was at Maker Camp, my wife was in Maine with the kids and my parents actually. But and of course all over Europe when I was racing, and all through South America, but never out west, and like never to California, never to Washington, never to Oregon. All the places I want to see, plus North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming. Want to go there someday. So my wife says, one day we can get an RV and we're just gonna go and see everything. It's like perfect.
I strongly suggest it.
So,
Yes.
but I have to get a trailer and build the workshop in the trailer that comes behind the RV, right? Mobile
You're
workshop.
speaking in completely rational sentences to me.
Yeah.
Everything about what you said makes perfect sense.
I mean, my shop's 160 square feet. I'm pretty sure I could get most of the tools I need.
That's
in
a 10 by 12, man. Like, easily
Absolutely.
accomplished.
Absolutely.
I guess, yeah.
I'm trying to think if I had any other questions for Ryan. Did you have any, TJ?
Does it take a lot of work first thing in the morning to make yourself so ruggedly handsome?
No. I mean, I look the same all the time. I cut my own hair. I'm that talented. I do have a little bit of it. And the white beard, it's all natural. So that's, that distinguished gentleman look at the age of 41 years old. And I would say at the age of 41, it was actually kind of like more like 36. It was like pretty much all white by then. I saw a picture of myself the other day with hair and like the dark beard, and I was like, it looks fake. It just looks fake. So yeah.
All right, Ryan. So we went over the show in the green room a little bit, but we forgot to mention a couple of things about the end of the show.
Okay.
One of them is that we need to take another lap through sponsors before we wrap up. And then we have a final question that we ask every guest. And
Awesome.
I am just going to absolutely surprise you with it. One more quick lap through Surf Prep Sanders. Hannah and the team at Surf Prep make some mighty fine abrasives. And if you think your Cubitron is something that's so special and you don't need Surf Prep, well, you're wrong. And you need to change your attitude and get on Team Surf Prep. And when you do, use code Sawdust Talk and save yourself a little bit of money at the time when you do it. Layla, Casey, Bombshell, thank you for hosting our merch. Patreon, buy Jessie a cup of coffee. Look at her. Look at her. Doesn't she look like she needs a cup of coffee?
Yep.
Yeah. So Patreon/Sawdust Talk. And then if you want to get involved in Makers for St. Jude, we're probably going to kick it off in January and February of next year. So if you got some stuff that maybe didn't sell, or stuff that you're especially proud of that you think you could auction or raffle off to an audience of your friends, peers, and people connected to you on social media, get a hold of Mike over at Woodworker versus Cancer or Makers for St. Jude, and he'll get you pointed in the right direction. We'd love to have you be a part of something this awesome.
Do you think that Canadians can get involved in that?
I don't know how to answer that question correctly, but I'm pretty sure any hand is a helping hand, clean or dirty. So
Awesome.
let's see if we can't get you and Mike hooked up. That'd be awesome.
Awesome.
Final question time. At the end of our episodes, and I'm sorry for blindsiding you with this, we ask our guests to think of a motivational quote or a thought or a piece of advice or something that you can share with our listeners to get them excited about kicking the door of their shop open, maybe just picking up a tool for the first time in a while, maybe picking up a tool for the first time in a couple of hours, but getting back out there, getting awesome and getting messy. What would you like to share with the listeners?
There's one quote that I absolutely, actually there's kind of two, but they're a little bit more geared towards my athletic career. One of them is always, and I've been this guy, always put yourself in a position to receive luck. It does work in the woodworking world as well. Putting yourself in a position to receive luck. So basically what I mean is, for me, training, and then you get a good lane draw. Oh, now you have an opportunity to do something even more than you normally would. It works for woodworking as well. But I think one of the biggest things for me in the woodworking, and it's kind of cheesy, but it's like, just don't be afraid to fail. And I was that guy at the very beginning. I didn't want to show things on Instagram like, oh man, I messed that up, like, and we make mistakes, but and that comes from sporting as well. You learn more from loss and failure than you ever will from a win or a perfectly successful project.
Couldn't agree more.
Absolutely. I love that so much.
That and work hard, play harder.
Yep.
That's what Maker Camp's all about.
Yeah.
Ryan, thank you so much for coming on tonight.
Thank you guys.
I had such a good time hanging out with you and Logan at Maker Camp, and obviously my co-host here, TJ. But it was really nice to really put a face and name and get to know you a little bit more on a personal level. And
I
just
couldn't
think
agree
you're
more.
a rock star, and I hope other
Thanks.
people can see it too. So
awesome. I really appreciate you guys. I had a really good time. And I'll tell you, for me, this is quite past my bedtime, but I would have done it at 12 if you told me midnight one.
You're so
no,
stop.
it was great, and I really appreciate you guys having me on and listening to me ramble, just like TJ at the start of the show. So,
well,
No
we can't
words
all
are
be
too
fly
much.
fishermen, so
no, but that was a good story.
yeah,
It was.
no,
That's
that
the
whole
first thing
weekend
that my
was
parents
fun.
told me too. If you go in the water with waders on, don't you slip.
Yep.
Don't you slip.
Yeah.
So I went to the beach and tested it out for fun.
Yeah. When you get to wear invincible pants, it's like the coolest thing ever.
All right,
I believe on that note, we probably
Yeah.
need to wrap the show up. Ryan, if you can stick around for a second while Jessie
Yep.
logs us out. Now all you have to do is sort of look towards a brighter future, seem a little bit pensive while Jessie logs us out. And we say things like, we'll see you guys next week, same bat time, maybe same bat channel.
Same bad channel.
There we go.